We welcome KPMG to our family of sponsors here on the podcast. In Florida, KPMG's focus is on enhancing the business of state agencies, hospitals, and educational institutions throughout Florida. They deploy the latest technology and innovation with a human-centered focus while addressing potential risks along the way. We had a fascinating podcast featuring two leaders from KPMG on how artificial intelligence, or AI, is being used and can be used in government today. You'll find it on our podcast page. It ran on May 5th.
You are in for a real treat today. We have with us live and in person in the Terracotta Room, Senate President-designate Ben Albritton. He is currently the Senate Majority Leader, and he will be taking over as President of the Upper Chamber after the November elections. And I have to tell you, this guy is the real deal. We chat about all kinds of things. We go around the world together. We talk about the citrus industry, some good news there he gives us. We talk about the 2024 elections, races to watch. We talk about what his priorities are going to be for the 2025 legislative session. We are going to have a lot of fun with the incoming Senate President, Ben Albritton. Please join us.
And I looked at that, and in that moment, I knew I'm supposed to do this.
You're listening to A Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida.
I am very, very excited today to introduce to the Deeper Divas. We have a special guest live in person with us in the Terracotta Room. It is Senate Majority Leader Ben Albritton, who also, this is one of the reasons why he's so special, other than the fact that he's one of the nicest guys in the Florida Capitol, is that he will be the Senate President after the November elections, the new Senate President taking over the reins from current President Kathleen Passidomo. Welcome to the Terracotta Room.
Dara, it's a fabulous honor to be here, and I appreciate this opportunity. I am really excited over the next 2 years and to have this opportunity to speak to you and your listeners about what we're going to aspire to over the next couple of years is really just a huge honor. So thank you very much.
He gave me permission to call him Ben, and I feel I am so old school. I still call senators and governor. I'm going to try to call you Ben because he's so charming and sitting across the table from me right now.
You're very kind. Thank you for that. Those are very kind words. Thank you.
I looked a little bit up of your history and saw that you were on the Florida Citrus Commission, and you also had a couple of other roles that you played before you joined the Florida House, which is where you were before you were elected to the Senate. How did you get involved in politics?
What a great question. It may take just a few minutes to work through this, but I hope that it's an interesting story, at least it is to my family and I. Before I get started, I want to be sure, and I want to thank God for the opportunity to serve in the Florida legislature. He has blessed my family and I substantially over the years. And then secondly, my wife, Missy, she has, anybody that's been in and around the political sphere understands not just as being a majority leader or Senate president, but just really investing yourself into the political process can be a grind many times. This idea of it being a part-time job, if you really love it and you really want to do good stuff and you want to be supportive of your constituents, then it's really a full-time job. And my family, Missy specifically, has been a trooper.
And Florida's a really big state.
Really the long way between Key West and Pensacola. Yes,
Yeah.
And everything in between, and it all matters. So I certainly want to thank Missy, and she's been an incredible blessing as well.
Let's do this to Missy.
Yay. I love that. Yes. That's awesome. But she's my soulmate and just an amazing human being.
That's great.
So a little bit about how politics became a part of our life. Mm-hmm. So in 2004, I was appointed to the Florida Citrus Commission. Prior to then, I had served on a water board and a local citrus growing board, and really enjoyed doing those things, and was never really interested in being involved in politics. It was just never on our radar. We had 3 young kids. Rebecca is 26 now. Josh is, he is now 23 on the 19th, and Ryan is 19. Now, obviously in 2010, they were much younger.
Sure.
So politics was just never really anything I had an interest in being involved in. But I did love the idea of public service in the ways that I'm a citrus grower, 4th generation citrus grower,
Wow.
sixth generation of my family to live in Hardee County, where I'm from.
We're going to talk about citrus in a bit.
Good, that's really good. It's a fabulous industry and message. So I was always kind of one of those people that would be asked to be on a host committee or do some of those things to be supportive of candidates that would have an interest in things that are important to the Heartland. So when this seat came up, the House seat, the original House seat, it was Southern Polk, Hardee, and Northwestern Highlands, and the gentleman that was serving in that was terming out. We were actually, ironically, doing some payroll management business with them and other things, and it was sitting in my office, and I asked him sincerely, who's going to run for your seat when you're finished? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, who are we going to get behind?
Who do I need to raise money for?
In all sincerity, right? That really was what it was. And he looked at me and he said,
Who do I have to have a fish fry for?
Right? Or a barbecue or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, well, what about you? And I just laughed at him and I said, no way, man. I'm not geared to do that. And we went on and had lunch, and I went home that night and I was talking to Missy and I said, so-and-so said the craziest thing to me today. And she shocked me. She said, why not?
Huh.
So I was taken back by that.
So she was all in from the get-go.
Well, no, but she, I think understood my desire to be helpful, desire to support my region, my industry, people, looking for ways to help people. And so we began to pray about it. I pushed off on it for about a year and a half. I mean, really pushed off, maybe a year and a few months. And I won't elaborate on it, but my faith's a big part of who I am.
I can tell that already.
There was this moment in time, August 17th, 2008, at our home church in Wauchula, and I won't, bore you with the details, but I knew in that moment it was.
It's not boring to me. If
So
you
I
want to
was-
talk about it, talk about it.
Well, our youngest had something called periodic fever, which they get a fever every once in a while, and it lasts for a little bit. You really can't do anything but just kind of provide therapy to it to try to get it to go down, periodic fever.
That can be very frightening as a parent when a child has a high
doubt.
fever. Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But he was sick, and I was sitting there holding him. He would have been 4 at the time, Ryan, our
Yeah.
youngest. And I looked down. This is a little emotional for me, but I looked down, and the bulletin for the day, thank you, you're very kind. The bulletin for the day was, the theme for the day was Sacrificial Sunday. And I looked at that, and in that moment, I knew I'm supposed to do this.
Wow.
Yep, in that moment. And
So God spoke to you in that way.
Well, I didn't see a handwriting on the wall. I didn't see a
Right.
burning bush.
I don't
didn't hear
mean
an audible
literally
voice.
spoke to
In
you,
my
but
spirit,
moved you.
God moved me in
Yeah.
my spirit to get involved in the race. And I went and talked to Missy about it. And at that point in time, we were all in because obedience matters. So we got in the race, won the primary by like 79-21, raised a lot of money.
He means percent, not votes.
Right, it's percentage, yeah. So it is a rural region, but more people than that vote. What a great point. So, the rest is kind of history. We served 8 years in the House and really enjoyed it. Of note, though, I will tell you that one of my pushbacks the whole time is that how is this going to really implement my family? How's it going to impact them?
Right.
And again, like I say, the kids were young and very impressionable. So what we decided to do at that moment is begin to homeschool our children. So we literally, when I first got elected in 2010, we would come up and we would stay up. We actually lived up here. The boys played baseball here. Rebecca did her things up here. We literally lived up here together for 5 or 6 months a year, during session, during committee weeks, and I would commute back to do things in the district for the House constituents. But so we did it as a family, and because of that, I have 3 children today that are bona fide patriots. They understand politics, not what you hear on any news channel about the craziness going on in Washington. They understand state government. They understand what's right, what's wrong, how you approach problems. It actually, because we decided to homeschool them, turned into a learning platform for them that was an incredible blessing, because how many kids get a chance to do that, right? To be able to see state government happen at an intimate level, and to understand, to have a dad that is involved in the process, that has a chance to ask or answer questions about, well, what does this mean, or what does that mean, or ... right? So
it's the ultimate civics schooling, right?
Definitely the ultimate civics education.
And they grew up in the process too.
Well put, they did. And what would have been difficult for us, because of Missy and the kids being at home and me coming up here,
Right.
we made the decision to make it a wholesome experience for them. And because of that, our family has prospered from it, intellectually, psychologically, emotionally, civically, you name it, right?
Right.
It turned into a great experience.
And that's such a fascinating story, and it speaks to, I think, who you are as a person. We don't know each other well yet, and I'm really looking forward to
Yes, ma'am.
developing a more... I'm trying to find a way of saying it that doesn't sound creepy, but yeah, I'm looking forward to...
We're going to be friends.
Yes, yeah, I feel
gonna
like
be
we
friends.
are already,
Yes, ma'am.
because I'm teary-eyed too. But, this can be, and I've seen it. I've been here longer than you, and I have seen people go berserk when they get up here, electeds, like they're, on spring break in their first year of college, for the first time unsupervised, and the kinds of stuff they do, it ruins families. Many divorces, many
We've seen
scandals have gone on here. And so I do think that with this younger group of, you were like you were ahead of your time, because we see that with some of these younger legislators coming up, many of them are bringing up their families. You see a lot of the young children inside the Capitol nowadays. You didn't see that 15 years ago. They have the daycare center on the 5th floor, right? Like that.
Yes.
That's a new development. So you were an early adopter, I think, is what we call that in the tech industry.
Well, I agree with what you're saying about the population that is the Florida House and Florida Senate. I've been in the Senate 6 years, and I've watched the average age of senators come down. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, what's the most rewarding for me, outside of the family part of it, and to feel like that I'm serving where the Lord called me to serve, is that I've had the opportunity to mentor some members. Mm-hmm. I'll give you one example. Danny and Courtney Burgess.
Danny,
We'll
talk about Danny Perez.
Stephanie would be upset about it. But anyhow, he's on my mind, obviously.
But yes, because Danny Perez is everybody. Our listeners, our divas are very sophisticated, but Danny Perez is going to be the House Speaker when you are the Senate President. So obviously on your mind a lot. You're probably having a lot of conversations together.
We are. There's no shortage of conversations, no ma'am. So the Burges,
yes,
Burgess.
They
have young kids. Just a fantastic family. He has a military heart. Serves in the military, for the military apparatus. Just amazing couple. And we had, they acknowledged it themselves in their own realm, but we had many conversations with them about homeschooling and about...
Okay.
And
because that's who I was thinking of when I was saying some of these guys are doing what you did, so that you influenced that, I bet.
Well, I don't know if we really influenced it. I think it was more a part of that Danny and Courtney understood that we had been down this road. Mm-hmm. And these are very smart, very capable, these two folks, and they're also very compassionate, very caring, very thoughtful. So their approach was, hey, let's go sit down and talk to Ben and Missy and make sure of what we don't know, that we don't know about doing this. So we walked them through and explained how it worked for us. So, I have found that the opportunity to mentor people in this process is one of the greatest blessings.
I so agree with you. I think it was Jeb who appointed you to, was it Jeb who appointed
Yes,
you
ma'am.
to the
Citrus Commission.
Citrus Commission. And that was a big thing with him, was mentoring. A lot of his minions ended up mentoring, and it became a part of their lives. And one of my big joys in my job is when I get to mentor young reporters. It is so,
Amen.
There's an intrinsic reward in doing that, and I really recommend it to everyone.
Amen.
Yeah.
When we go through life, we get to learn things, and being able to help younger people that want to do well, they're well intended, they want to do a good job, and for them to be able to hear from folks like us and others that take this opportunity seriously, to say, here's how I can help you look around the corner and not make a mistake that I made, right? Part of it's transparency, being honest with them about the mistakes you've made on your own and owning that. And the other is just helping them, to guide them through over the hurdles and around the corners and look out for this sharp, pointy object. And, it is very rewarding.
Sometimes it sounds like you have a unique and very close relationship with your children. I have one child, and sometimes kids, young people, can hear it better coming from someone they're not related to and who isn't their parent.
Yes, ma'am.
You can
Yes,
tell
ma'am.
them the same exact thing, and yet if Miss X says it, somehow it carries more weight than if Mama says it. I don't know why that is, but I think it's built into kids, right?
I think it's the way maybe we're all wired. Yes, I will tell you that our daughter and Missy are clones. They are both amazing women of faith, amazing women of character, integrity, take motherhood incredibly seriously. And, Missy laughs about it. And if she hears this, she's going to laugh about it when I say this. They can, even since Rebecca was young, they could butt heads over some issue, and I could walk in and say the same thing, and Rebecca would be like, okay.
Oh, right.
So,
right.
That's
the mother-daughter dynamic.
That's exactly
too.
right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you for sharing that personal information with
Yes,
us.
ma'am.
I really appreciate that. That's how you got involved in politics. Now we're talking about you mentioned Danny Perez, so we're going into the 2024 election season. One of the things that you do as majority leader, as the incoming president, you're working, you helping to recruit candidates and getting candidates or are you not doing that? Are you working with the incoming bunch of senators? And we haven't got qualifying yet, so we don't know who's exactly going to be running, but it looks like we've got a bunch of people coming. You've already issued some endorsements, so you're going to have some people coming over from the House. Are Republicans going to retain the supermajority after 2024 elections?
I believe so. And for your listeners, if you are going to be the president after the 24 election cycle, what you do is you manage Senate campaigns.
Right. That's why you were looking at me like I was saying something wrong. So that's why I stumble. You're very patient. And you didn't interrupt me because I'm an interrupter. So I'll try. I know I didn't grow up in the deep South. Like I grew up in Hollywood, Florida. So our culture is different. Interrupting is just how you communicate, and I know here it's considered to be very rude. So let me apologize in advance for all my rudeness.
You're doing great. Look, I'm pretty hard to offend. So really quickly, I do want to say, there is an organization. It's an operation called Senate Campaigns, FRSCC.
Right.
And when you're
Florida Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee.
You got it. Yes, boom. Yes, ma'am. So you become chairman of that, so you go out and you raise resources, you help with the candidates and their consultants, managing campaigns, producing strategy, working on how to make sure at the end of the day, to your question, the idea of there continuing to be 28 Republican senators out of the 40. Now, my responsibility specifically is the Senate. Of course, Danny Perez on the other side has his races, his House campaigns, and has all of that he is managing on the other side. And we are both gentlemen, and we stay out of each other's way. He focuses on House races. I focus on Senate races. It's one of the, for your listeners, I think one of the great things that you will see over the next couple of years that Danny and I, we can have an agreement. He's responsible for that. I'm not. I'm responsible for Senate campaigns. He's not. So we see that as a perfect opportunity to be supportive of each other by not getting in each other's way. So the question is that do I think at the end of the day that we're going to maintain in the Florida Senate a supermajority? For sure. I believe that is right. Now,
me too.
We have Corey Simon, his race up here.
That's right.
13 counties, Leon County being essentially right in the middle of that. It's a tough seat, but we have a huge amount of support. We are laser focused on that. And I'm going to tell you this about Corey Simon. I've been all over this district with him. I've been to fundraisers with him. I've spoken in support of him when there's annual dinners and things like that. Number one, I have rarely seen, after my years in the legislature, somebody that works as hard for his district as Corey Simon, and that means campaigning as well. And then secondly, he is so well liked.
I have heard that.
So well liked. He is an amazing human being to start with. Not even mentioning the fact he's been wildly successful in football, played at the NFL, Pro Bowler, big-time FSU star back in the day. His personal story is inspiring. The way he looks at the world is inspiring. His dedication to his district, his dedication to people in need. I called him when the tornadoes came through up here. And hey, what can I do to help? And he's on the ground. He's working. I heard that immediately.
He was around, and I heard that after Idalia too, because he had a lot of counties that were impacted by Idalia.
Yes. So I feel really good about it. We're going to have the resources to move the needle for him. He's
so the reason this is when I always say I love when I have questions and the guest gets to the questions before I do. That was one of the, no, that's how it works organically that way. And don't apologize, please. That's perfect. That is how it's supposed to work.
Well, you're welcome. How about that?
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that was one of the races that I was going to ask you, which races do you think will be the most high-profile races or the most competitive races? And right now, as I said, qualifying hasn't taken place yet. That's in mid-June, I think. And Darryl Parks has said announced that he's going to challenge Corey Simon. Corey Simon flipped that seat. It was held by Senator Lurann Osley. And that seat did get reconfigured a little bit after reapportionment, whatever year that was. It feels like 1,000 years ago, doesn't it?
It does.
I guess it was only 4 years ago, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, it's got more rural areas of the outlying areas in around Tallahassee in it. And so that was the first time Tallahassee, I think, had a Republican state senator, and I don't know, in my recent memory anyway, which is forever. So anyway, Darryl is a trial attorney and a civil rights lawyer based in Tallahassee, and his former partner is Ben Crump, who is kind of a household name in civil rights litigation. Now, awesome. You will have two prominent black men competing against each other for this seat, which I just find that very interesting for a variety of reasons. And they're both very prominent in different ways in this part of the state. So I think it'll be an interesting race that I'm going to be paying attention to.
Yes, ma'am. Not just because I have to, but my... If I was wagering on this, I would take Corey Simon every day. I love him as a human being. I've rarely met anybody that has been as successful as he is, that is as humble as he is. It's shocking when you
See,
have
I
the
don't know him
opportunity-
at all, so I'll trust you on all this.
I believe you'll sense, and I don't know Mr. Parks. I've never
I
met
do
him.
know Daryl, and I really like him too.
Yeah. I think you'll find with Corey that he's just a humble servant and a good man. So anyhow, it will be interesting to see how the district receives both of them. And, obviously it goes without saying we're going to be laser focused on the Corey Simon side of this because he is a Republican. But,
Sure. How expensive do you think that race is going to be?
Whatever it takes.
How much? Like, how much? I mean, because these Senate races now, that one, I think, with Corey Simon and Lorraine.
Precisely.
Yeah, that was
Several million.
very expensive. Like maybe the most expensive Senate race ever. I'm not sure, but
I think maybe the Broder seat or one of the ones in Miami would have eclipsed.
The
and
JJ.
Yes.
Yeah.
JJR. We call
Yeah.
him that.
Right.
And it's you have to remember though what you're talking about is that it's really about the media market.
The media market, right?
Right. So the Orlando
Not
media
as
market,
expensive
very
up here,
expensive.
yes.
Correct. So
Yes.
if you're
I was getting a mailer a day in the because I'm a registered voter here in Leon County. When Corey Simon and what's her Marva,
is it Preston? Barbara Preston?
yeah, I was getting a mailer, sometimes two in the same day in that race.
There was a lot.
Yeah.
There was a lot of money spent in that
Yeah.
race, and a lot of boots on the ground, knocking on doors. There was a lot of stuff going on. A race like that, in this media market, would be if it was going to be a heavy investment. I don't know, $3 or $4 million.
Sure.
But understand when I say whatever it takes. If it's 5, it's 5. It's 7, it's 7. If it's 10, it's 10. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that Corey Simon comes back. He's been so good to this district. And there may be people out there that disagree with him philosophically on some issues, but I'd encourage them to go back and check his voting record. He is just a fantastic human being. Him and Tasha have become good friends of Missy and I. We've had dinner with them several times. He's helped me grow as much as I have him, and I'm all in.
Okay, well, I'm all in. There, you heard it here first. Probably not first, but you also heard it here.
First on the radio.
First on the radio. We have a new email address, and we'd love to hear from you. To reach us and give us your input, tell us what you'd like to hear. Tell us what you thought about what you already heard. Tell us how fabulous we are. Join the Deeper Divas team. Send an email to podcasts@e.newsserviceflorida.com. That's podcasts@e.newsserviceflorida.com. And I promise I will read everyone. So, any other highly competitive races that I should be aware of right now?
So highly competitive is, they're most of the rest of them are
Ones to watch. then.
Primaries.
All right, ones to watch.
There's one in Northeast Florida with Tom Leake will be one to watch.
You've endorsed him.
We have.
He's a leader in the House. I forget which committee.
He's the appropriations chair.
Yeah, that's about as. How could I forget that? He's a budget chief, right? Budget
He's a
chair.
budget chief.
Yeah,
That'd be
you
one
don't
to
get
watch.
more powerful than that unless you're the actual speaker or president.
That or the rules chair in the House.
The
Those
rules
are the biggies.
too. That's true. Those are the big ones.
So that'd be one to watch. What I will also say though is that I have a huge blessing coming ahead of me, for me, and that is Kathleen Pasadomo, a dear friend of mine, and I would want your listeners, those of them that may pray or, be people of faith. She lost her husband tragically on a hiking expedition out in the West.
Horrible, heartbreaking.
Incredibly terrible. She needs our prayers every day. So she's working
Thank
her
you
way
for
through.
mentioning that.
Yes, ma'am. But here's what's great. She's going to come back to the Senate, and she's going to be one of those people in my life. She and I are like brothers and sisters. I have, and she has, and we have built a relationship that is very thoughtful, very transparent, really an incredibly solid relationship. And so I'm super happy she's coming back. Her leadership is going to be great. And then also Senator Gates, Don Gates.
So you'll have
previous
two
president.
former Senate presidents in your chamber.
Sure will. And
Telling you, not like they're going to be telling you what to do, huh?
So this is
Don Gates will be telling you what to do, dude. I'm telling right now. I'm
will,
flat out. I know him. He
I
will
will
be.
tell you what, here's what I'll say about President Gates. I'm happy he's going to be in the chamber. Rarely is there anybody, you may be right, we'll see. But here's what I'll tell you.
We'll get you back and you tell me whether I'm right.
Hey, that's after the first session, then you come in and we'll do a Ben tells all and we'll figure it out. So, but President Gates is super smart. He's another one.
Yeah.
He's really good at mentoring as well.
He'll be telling you what to do, and you won't know that he's telling you what to do until 3 days later.
Likely so. Right. So, but I have an immense respect for him and Kathleen both. And, I've had people in town that have said, well, it's going to be hard to manage because the chamber won't know who to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that. I feel like, I watched it when Tom Lee was in the room and, here's what I believe. I believe this. I believe that power is most powerful when you share it. And what I mean by that is that a Senate president has the authority to dictate almost anything. But the truth is that when you empower people around you to be themselves and you empower them to pursue their passions and, you're not just sitting in an ivory tower, pointing out, go do this, go do that, go do this, and you're building relationship with people. You're seeking wisdom. The worst thing that a presiding officer can do is to hold up in the president's office and not seek the wisdom of all the other folks that are in the chamber that come from different walks of life. So I view Kathleen and I view Don is on the list of people that I'm going to be able to interact with and say, Don or Kathleen, this is the situation. Here are the factors. If it was you, what would you do?
Yeah.
And they can take the experiences they had, right? And the flip side to that, and what really matters as well, is that here's the situation, and have you been here before and made a mistake, and are you willing to share that? So help me see around the corner to where I'm not making mistakes that I could avoid. Mm-hmm. So I view it, and there's lots of other senators, by the way, that will be in the room. I want my leadership to be about building, not tearing down.
So that's a really great answer. And I was wondering, because it is unusual for a Senate president to remain in the Senate after their term as president is over. They usually do that in their last 2 years in office. So
yes, ma'am.
I know Senate President Pasadomo, she's been on the show too before.
She's great.
She is great, and my heart does go out to her for her loss. I was going to ask you, you mentioned President Gates, Kathleen Pasadomo. You've worked under some other governors. You've been in office for 14 years now.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was going to ask you if there was a president or a leader that you were planning on modeling your tenure as president around.
Well, what a fascinating question, and I haven't contemplated that. If you'll give me just a second, let me
So
think
I
about
asked him a new question.
No,
That's good.
That is a yes, ma'am. That is a new one. Let me start with the governor. So whether somebody likes him or not, from a policy perspective, the man is courageous, and that's something that I want to be courageous too. And I look forward to working with him. I think that he and I are going to work together very, very well. But I do see in him a type of, his name of his book, The Courage to Be Free, right? he is clearly a very courageous man for the things that he believes in, and I want to emulate that. I want to be that too. Wilton Simpson was my president my third and fourth year in the Senate, and what I will say is that Wilton is one of the most intelligent problem-solving people I've ever been around. He sees things differently, and I don't mean political philosophy. I mean he sees a problem, a pile of Legos, and when he looks at that, then he sees this thing that can be created out of it. That's something I want to emulate. It's something that I hope to be able to bring to the table because Floridians deserve that, and it's one of his greatest traits. Kathleen, she's another one. So I've served under Kathleen. She carries with her this confidence, and she knows what she believes. She knows why she believes it, and she unabashedly, unapologetically inserts that in the way that she managed the chamber. That is something that I want to emulate, and she's a fantastic listener. That's not always the case with people that lead in this process. So, yeah, I love that about her. That's a piece of her that I want to be able to take and learn from and apply to my leadership. I remember Will Weatherford, Steve Crisafulli. Those are still men that are friends of mine.
Two former speakers.
Two former speakers, yes, when I was a sophomore and a junior in the chamber. Very diligent men, very smart, a lot like Wilton, very problem-solving, problem-oriented, very compassionate men, very thoughtful in their relationships. That's something I want to emulate in this process. So I would say the best way to answer it is this. I've served now under 4 speakers and 3 Senate presidents. And I've learned something from every one of them. There are things I've learned that didn't turn out so well that, maybe we shouldn't do. And then I've learned from their personalities and how that translates into how to manage inside the political process. I've learned something from every one of them,
right.
And all of which would be a pro and a con, a good and a bad. You'll find me sometimes, you go back and look at some footage in the Senate, a lot of times I'll just go sit on my desk is right in the middle of the chamber as majority leader, but I'll go off to the side. And I like to observe people.
Yes, I do see you sitting on this side.
Well, and the reason I like to do that is that you can learn a lot by just observing people, observing who they interact with, what those interactions look like.
That's what I'm doing from the upstairs,
Right? Sure, right? So you broke the code. You can learn so much by just watching people.
Yeah.
So, over the years, yes, it's been 14 years, I have learned so much.
So I like that answer a lot because what you're saying is I'm going to take the best from all these different people and mash them up, and that
that's the goal, right?
That's the goal. Right.
But here's the thing: I'm a sinner saved by grace. I'm imperfect. I'm not capable of perfection, and look, for your listeners, sorry to let you down. I make mistakes, and I'm transparent about that, right?
Yeah.
I make mistakes, and I'm not afraid to own them.
I think my friends who are in the process, I have lobbyist friends a lot who we talk every day. I just don't understand why it is so anathema to leaders to admit that they made a mistake, to say, hey, I was wrong. Why is that something that people are afraid to do or unwilling to do?
Look, I don't know the answer to the question because this is really important, and I'd love for your listeners to hear this. This is really important. I've never walked in anybody else's shoes. So what their motivation would be to not be willing to say, look, I'm capable of making a mistake. I'm imperfect. Just the fact that I said that on this radio show, somebody could take that clip and go out and play that to say, oh, look, Ben Albritton said he made a mistake. He clearly made a mistake with this policy. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of ways that are where I think being transparent, just being honest with people,
it's kind of an old school way of governing. I mean, because nowadays there's so much pressure to just like be the meanest, be the toughest. You know, you're fighting, you're running for the next seat all the time. There's just a lot of, you don't see a lot of real. There is a lot of pressure. I am going to put you on the spot and ask you, is there something that you have done in your career as a legislator that you think was a mistake that you wish you hadn't done now?
For sure. In the book of James, it talks about, in chapter 2, it talks about not showing favoritism to the highest or the lowest, right? I spoke down to somebody that works in the process when I was a state representative, and it bugged me, and I just finally came clean and I asked them to come back to the office, and I just sat down with them and said, look, I'm sorry. I made a mistake, and I never should have said that to you. I never should have had that tone with you. It was irresponsible, it was disrespectful, and it flies in the face of my faith. I am not supposed to show favoritism. And what I did is that I treated you unfavorably, which is a way of showing favoritism. And quite frankly, and I'm not going to say who it was, and if he hears this, he will know I'm talking about him. But, you know, he looked at me very shocked. He never expected.
Was he a staffer?
No, ma'am. But he looked at me very shocked, and he just said, thank you. And you could tell it was bona fide sincere, right? And that's one.
Probably the first and only time.
I can't speak for that.
Yeah.
I just know in my life, you ask about my walk, where I've made a mistake. And quite frankly, one of the worst ways in how you treat people.
Yeah.
And I've always strived to try to be fair and exhibit, you know, love, not hate, and exhibit the best that we have to offer, the best that my faith drives me to have offer with people as I interact. But
everyone,
that was a big one.
I did that. I was having a really bad day, and it was the dry cleaners. It was something, and the dry cleaner, and I insisted they had done something wrong, and they were very polite and nice to me, and I was a terror, and I drove away, and I had someone else in the car with me, and I wasn't yelling and I wasn't cursing or anything, but I just was completely inappropriate and
maybe a little rude.
Very rude. Yeah. And I got about 2 blocks away, and I turned around. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm going back there. And I went back there, and I walked inside, and I apologized profusely, and the owner, and I felt so much better.
Amen.
I am sure they felt better, and the employees were all there, and they were all watching wide-eyed, and I really humbled myself because I was so wrong, and I felt so much better. And one of the things that we learn in recovery, I've been in recovery for a really long time.
Congratulations.
Is to thank you. That's higher power does that.
Yes, ma'am.
And is like, you have to keep your side of the street clean is one of the things I learned. And that means you treat people with respect, and you're not better than anyone else. And so I totally relate to that story.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And this goes to show you that human beings can be messy. And it doesn't matter if it's a bad day at a dry cleaner or a bad day in the Florida Capitol. Look,
if it's someone you know or a stranger, it doesn't matter.
Society needs, human nature needs, human beings need a lot of love. So that's certainly one way to share it.
You're listening to A Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida.